It is Dave, it is Duncan, back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Danish death metalers LIVLØS. The band's new album, The Crescent King, will be released on October 4th via Noctum Productions. I've been working on my Danish today, Duncan. So,
if you say so.
You've no idea how many interviews I watched just to get the pronunciation of that band.
Let's see how you get on with the names.
Yeah, I'll probably skip over the names, but
how very disrespectful you, Dave.
Unless their first names are easy to pronounce, then we'll see. The triumphant ascendance of Danish death metal titans LIVLØS continues with the quintet's epic third full-length, the concept album, The Crescent King. With a new record, the band continues to deliver its punishing style of heavy grooves, melancholic melodies, and progressive musicianship, while unfolding a cosmological fantasy-inspired narrative of the Crescent King, a vivid symbol of humanity, its psyche, and cyclists in the universe. Following the second album's release, LIVLØS toured extensively, including a big sold-out Copenhagen headliner, a European tour with Convent and Implore, a national headliner tour alongside appearances at Inferno Festival, Tallinn Music Week, and not least the band's triumphant live peak in front of 14,000 people at Copenhagen in 2020.
At Copenhagen, man, sounds like a fucking riot.
It does. It really does.
One day, Dave.
The Crescent King is produced by Jakob Bredal. It is mastered by Brad Boatwright.
Of course it is.
And carries artwork by Eleran Cantor, who has worked with Testament, Bloodbath, Creator, and Hate Eternal.
Let me just, on the back of that, it might be my favourite album cover of the year. I would
awesome.
Have this on my wall above my satanic fucking altar. It is absolutely mint. It reminded me the way I felt the first time that I saw the artwork for the Satanist. I was just like, this is actual fucking full on art. And it goes with the album so well. So yes.
Actually, when I first saw it, it actually reminded me of Hate Eternal, weirdly enough, and then afterwards I read the press release, I was like, right, this is now making sense.
This is all coming together.
Yeah. So, album 3, 10 tracks, about 48 minutes in length. But to be honest, when I saw the combo of Bredal and Boatwright, I just knew. I was like, right, okay, this has to be on our list. We have to check this out.
Double B's.
So I'd heard the previous album, and then there were none from 2021. So I kind of had an idea of what to expect going into this. LIVLØS are a slightly more kind of like brutal kind of Melodeath band, I suppose, where there's like a kind of huge emphasis on the groove, and a real kind of nastiness in the delivery, but also a little touch of melody just when it's needed. So if you're listening to this, you're thinking, oh, this might be up my street. If you like bands like Carcass or Black Dahlia Murder, even a wee bit At the Gates possibly, then this may strike a little chord with you. I enjoyed the last album. It was another Bredal and Boatwright effort, so sounded great. But that album, I think I went back and listened to it again when I was listening to this new one, and it definitely sounded like they were starting to kind of find their feet in terms of what they wanted the LIVLØS sound to be. The Crescent King is the next phase of that, where the band have just elevated a few things and paid even more attention to detail on this one. Firstly, this all, as I've said, comes as a concept album, where it's following a kind of fantasy-inspired narrative of the Crescent King, and I think that really works on this album. I felt like you could feel the kind of story arc throughout this album. It gave the album a really cool flow to it. And because of that, I think it's one of those albums that kind of peaks in all the kind of right places as you go through it. Even down to the way that they may like add a bit of like acoustic guitar in places, like to close out a track, or they'll add a bit of piano in the middle of a track. It felt much more kind of planned out rather than just like a kind of bunch of songs. This definitely had a kind of flow to it. Also, the way they've ordered the album gives you like a really great variation of tracks that are going to go from like just like nasty and poundingly heavy into tracks that do have a more kind of melancholic kind of melody to them. And same with the speed of the album, it does switch from kind of track to track, giving you like a really good balance of really fast stuff and then kind of slower grooves. And the heavy parts, like the heavy parts on this album, definitely felt more pronounced on this. And like they were always a band that had like that kind of like vicious kind of attack, but when Orbit Weaver kicked in after that intro, I was like, oh right, okay, this feels even more like direct and like just like controlled. There was a tightness in that track that I don't think I've ever heard LIVLØS accomplish on like previous albums. That just the kind of movement of it, you know, the between the different parts of the track just felt much more precise on this one. So like when they slip into something that's got a bit of a slower groove, you really feel it, like the shift and the kind of weight of the track. I also love the fact that when they do switch gears on this album and they give you something a bit kind of girthier, it never felt like they were just like imitating their favourite bands, you know, like Carcass or Black Dahlia. Firstly, this has a Danish streak to it, like
oh God, yeah.
that feel is there like from the start. So I feel like that alone kind of sets them apart. But even in the kind of the details of the riffs here, I really like the way they put these together. They add like certain, like almost like kind of like discordant notes, or they'll maybe like augment a chord here and there. It just makes the riffs a bit more kind of distinctive. And you know, there's these little kind of like melodic tails they use as well. They do a lot of that on the title track. It makes the tracks far more interesting to listen to. And that's just come with time and experience for the band. You can hear that growth in this album, especially in the songwriting. It does feel more mature, like to use that phrase. But even in the playing, the musicianship on the album, like the levels of playing on this has just kind of jumped up a notch as well. I loved how tracks like Maelstrom, for example, like that really shows like the kind of dexterity of this band, and even the intuition and the songwriting on that track. The solo on that track is fantastic. Like, I love that. It's really cool how it kind of comes from nowhere. It's like really buried in the background, and then slowly it kind of emerges to the forefront of the track, which was really cool. Or like the other one that was really kind of standout was Harvest. The bass playing on that track is nuts, man. Like the guy is just all over the fretboard. I think it's Benjamin, his name is. Just really like kind of more progressive kind of style playing on that track, which was really cool. But out with the kind of the core members of the kind of guitars, bass and drums, you've also got the vocalist Nicholas, who I think he sounds the best he's ever sounded, to be honest. I felt like he definitely had more control of his voice on this album. His tone felt more kind of well-rounded. I think every word he screams just felt intense, really, but a lot of depth to his voice as well. I'd say using a bit more kind of register on this album. Tracks like Usurpers has that kind of like death metal meets black metal kind of hybrid feel to it, but he's got such a cool tone on that track. Same with Maelstrom as well. I actually think Maelstrom into Usurpers is a real kind of highlight on this release. Both quite like unique sounding tracks, but they work really well together as well. That Blackened side on Usurpers was a really, really clever move, just to give you another side of the band, but also the kind of switch in tone, give you kind of a bit more to kind of think about. And then they bring a bit of that back as well on the closing track, where the riffs do get a touch more kind of blackened in certain sections, and again the vocals become a bit more tortured sounding. Like production wise, like this Yeah, this is definitely my favourite LIVLØS sound to date. The drum production on this is fucking flawless.
It's so clean. Like, see, when you listen to Scourge of the Stars, where you get sections, especially in the intro, where all the instrumentation just like goes out, and he's just filling some. You like the enunciation of each hit of a tom or a fucking ride. The ride is so clean on this; it's unbelievable. Which, I mean, is always used like utilized smartly in kind of death metal, but I don't always like the production of a ride cymbal in death metal. I either feel it's too loud to overcompensate, or it's not loud enough to the point where you're like that. You might as well just be like fucking ringing a bike bell for all I can hear. On this one, it is absolutely fucking immaculate.
Yep. I love the drum tones that Jakob's kind of captured for the record. They sound like just immaculate, but the EQ of the kit in particular just really delivers this huge kind of punch to the album.
Natural as well. Like,
very,
once
very
again,
so.
I know it sounds bizarre, but see when you listen to death metal and it sounds like an organic kit, that stands out to me 100 times more than when you listen to it like that. I know that bass drum sound because you've heard it 40 times in the last month. Just like very, very, very clean. No fuckery there at all. Just
loved it.
Just a little bit of accentuation on it. Just really well recorded.
That snare as well, like just the crack off of that is just unbelievable. Same with the rest of the band though, like the guitar tone's really rich, really kind of metallic sounding. There's a great presence in the bass which sits really nicely in the mix, and then the vocals have a really cool kind of raspy kind of tone to them as well, where you feel like you feel like you're kind of standing right in front of him for the whole album, where he's just kind of screaming in your face. So like for the band, just continue to hire Jakob and Brad just to produce everything that you do in the future.
Yeah, I think they pull out. I mean, you can never future project here, but I think they're pulling out your best sound here. So.
Yeah. For sure. This was fucking awesome. I really liked this. I don't tend to listen to a huge amount of melodic death metal. I have my kind of favourites that I kind of go back to, but this is a band that I think are just getting better and better. And I feel like this album, on album 3, I think they've finally hit that kind of like upper echelon of that genre. And I mean, actually, they don't sound like this band, but when I was listening to it, it kind of reminded me of the same kind of quality and almost like perfectionism of that Dath album that we reviewed.
Oh, yeah, fuck yeah.
The Deceivers, I think it was called, or Doth, or however you pronounce that. But that was one that was kind of like really focused and a lot of kind of nuance and stuff. And I feel like the LIVLØS album definitely kind of feels in a kind of similar kind of quality to that. I think this is the best one they've done to date. I think if you're a fan of like death metal or melodic death metal, this is an absolute no-brainer for me. What about yourself? What did you make it?
Yeah, similar to you, like melodic death metal to me had its day a while ago. And as a result, everything that kind of comes out is kind of either it skews more in the melody and less in the death metal, and that kind of loses me, or skews more in the death metal and with like flurries of like the kind of melodic side in the guitar work, which makes me think commit. Are you just putting that in to be gimmicky? The balance I think is of good bands is fine. It's a very fine-tuned thing. It's interesting you mentioned Doth. The band that this, and they don't sound like them, but the way I felt listening to them reminded me a lot of when we reviewed that Cult of Lilith album, which I loved. They're not the same genre, but they were one of those ones that just reminded me that I have an interest in a subgenre that I don't listen to often. And the bands that stand out to me are the ones that are exceptionally good within those subgenres. LIVLØS have this innate quality of just really crafting a great album. Like that ebb and flow that you were talking about is prevalent throughout this. No two tracks start off the same. Where you finish a finality of a track, the next track will take you somewhere different, whether that's pace or or aggression or groove. The bits that stood out to me mostly in this one were those moments where they contrast really big melodic sprawling guitar work with that just nasty death metal groove. And they sit so comfortably together in the way they've crafted the songs. It's kind of a joy to listen to. Vocally, this guy's tone is fucking awesome. There's a real snarl, but at the same time, a real precision in what he does. This is completely measured, completely controlled, and it's enunciated really, really well. So you get those kind of, but he's hitting notes. So when he goes low or goes high, everything is handled with a level of, like, a control is the best way to describe it. It's never pushed too far. It's never held too far back. The production on it really, really helps. Although I'd be surprised if Jakob said he actually did much to the vocals here. This sounds like a guy that just knows these register and is just happy to explore. And those accentuations of where he really snarls high or really goes low are just punctuation marks on what the guitar and the drums and the bass are doing. The music, like you mentioned, the bass working is fucking great. A lot of the time it can be pretty understated, but the moments where it actually steps out from underneath the shadow of the guitar, it's for good reason, and it actually becomes this really playful balance between what the guitar's doing and what the bass is doing. But they don't overuse it either, so they're not at any point kind of pushing a sound like the recent Job for a Cowboy album where the bass is just going everywhere. And it's great to listen to, but at times I'm like, I need to focus on one. So I'm either focusing on what the guitar's doing or the bass. I can't focus on both. In the case of this one, when the moments diverge, they're still very much in the same register. Neither is going into this virtuoso territory which commands your full attention. That's really, 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 really well done. The Float album, I'll be honest, when you sent it through, notwithstanding an album we're going to be talking about later on, this was the longest album. And like as soon as I put it over into iTunes or Apple Music, other listening mechanisms are out there. It does come up with the genre, but it comes up with the genre that either the label or whatever is tagged in. It did come up as melodic death metal, and I'll be honest with you, Dave. Like, it was 10 songs, it's 48 minutes, and it's melodic death metal. And I did do a little bit of a. All right, here we go. I did. It's hard not to, because like melodic death metal to me, 40 minutes is usually kind of at the point where I'm like, wrap up. But the way that this is constructed, pieced together, and handled, actually, you never really feel its length.
No.
They carefully craft two kind of mostly instrumental shorter tracks in here, with Solstice as the opener, and then Solace that comes in later on as a kind of, and it's interesting because it comes in not as the penultimate track, but it comes in two before the end. But Solace like actually weaves really, really well into Throne of Cosm, and then Endless Majesty finishing off is just this really great kind of fucking full stop on the release overall. You get the feeling that there has been a bit of time with the band sitting there going, I need to get this order right. And I've told you before, on a concept album, that's paramount for me. If a song kind of feels like, right, and like there's a theme on this whole album, except this one song, which is like either an introduction or an interlude later on that takes me out of it, it's hard to get my attention back into it. But Solace works really well as a build up into those final two songs. And whilst I would generally argue the placement, I would say that, if you're going to have that short track, lead it into the final track, actually works really, really, really well here. Production, you've mentioned it, is fucking awesome. Once again, I think Jakob Redl goes as far as to show that pound for pound he's one of the more interesting producers walking the planet right now, in that I've now heard him produce everything from snarly punk to discordant noisecore, post-rock and post-metal, death metal and melodic death metal, and all of the sounds feel organic to the band. They don't feel like a guy that has, like, let me put it this way, if you were to ask me what's Jakob Bredl's sound, I would say, what does the band sound like? That's how I feel. Like, what does the band sound like? Because that's his sound. Like, he's gonna take whatever the band sounds like, and he's gonna elevate that sound. He's not gonna fuck with it. He's just gonna elevate what the sound is, and that's a gift. To be able to like be so in tune with what a band's doing, to be able to pull their sound out even further. And you mentioned before, like, in terms of just the levels here overall, it's mixed and mastered perfectly, and that combo is always going to be a dangerous combo, like because there's just quality there, and I hope they continue to work together because they've got something going on that I think works really well. To me, it's a really easy recommend for an album that gets really snarly and really challenging in bits. It's just very clean, very precise, and kind of reminded me that like melodic death metal still actually has something worth checking out. Like if you're a fan of the genre, you're going to love this. If you're someone that dabbles, you're going to love this. If you're actually wanting an introduction as a way to head back, I think this is a great entry point. You mentioned like bands like At the Gates earlier on. They're always going to be heralded as the forerunners for that. But I think when you get to 2024, recommending At the Gates is maybe a challenge just because of the production and whatnot. That if you want to get into the genre now, this is a great way to do it, and then you can work your way backwards. It's a contemporary band, I think they handle it really well. And lastly, I mentioned it before, I'm going to mention it again. Would love a t-shirt with this album artwork on it. It's fucking bitchin'. So yeah, as a whole package, very, 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 very little you could gripe with here at all, if any.
Final thing, scores for the Crescent King. I said before, it kind of felt like it sat in a similar kind of tier to that recent Doth album in terms of kind of quality and stuff. I gave that a 4.5 out of 5, and this sits exactly in the same place, 4.5 out of 5 for me. What about yourself?
I'm right there with you. Yeah, I think this is the beauty of this as well. I was listening to it, you could hear little ideas that the band are still kind of working out. Which makes me think that, once again, I know we say this a lot, but in this day and age, who can count out a band from having a 5-star album? I think they've got, in my opinion, they've got a better album in there. But if this was the best the band ever did, they should be fucking immensely proud of it. So 4.5.
Yeah, nice. So that is the new LIVLØS album, The Crescent King, out on October 4th on Noctum Productions. I'll put the links below to the band, the pre-order, Bandcamp, all that sort of stuff. Check it out, have a listen, see what you think. Stick some comments in below once you've done that. Thanks for checking out the review. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.